Last time we were discussing the greater discourse on the lion's roar, that is called the Mahāsihanāda Sutta. Now, we spoke about the Buddha, and we also discussed the meaning of what is normally recited, Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho. And today we are going to read from there on and so that is on page 69, 165, that's the second page, and I read, and he will never infer of me according to Dhamma. That Blessed One enjoys the various kinds of supernormal powers. Having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He goes unhindered through a wall, through an enclosure, through a mountain, as though through space. He dives in and out of the earth as though it were water. He walks on water without sinking, as though it were earth. Seated cross-legged, he travels in space like a bird. With his hand he touches and strokes the moon and sun. So powerful and mighty, he wields bodily mastery even as far as the Brahma world. Now these things, people might think that these are not real things, these are not true things, and this is all made up. It is just a belief. But today, if we study a little physics, modern physics like the study of the subatomic particles, now they have found that although in the normal way, if we throw a ball against the wall, it will bounce back. But now they say, if we throw a subatomic particle like the electrons and protons, it can go through the wall. So the Buddha had powers to gain control over the body, that his mind can control the body to such an extent that it is possible even to produce many bodies out of just one body. And then he can bring back the many bodies to one body again. That is why he says, having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, he becomes one. And then he can also become invisible. And that is why he says he appears and vanishes. And he goes unhindered through a wall, through an enclosure, through a mountain, as though through space. So he can go through a wall also. That is because he is able to bring the body into that subatomic level. And not only that, he can even bring the body into energy. Now the modern scientists are aware that matter can be turned into energy and energy can be turned into matter. Although the body is in the form of matter, it can be changed into energy. And that is how he is able to travel even to other planets. That's why he says he can even touch the moon and even the sun. And he can even go to the center of the galaxy, that is where the Brahma world is. And the Brahma world is not in the same form that we experience here on this earth. That is also in subatomic particles. So he can become invisible even there. And there are other sutras where he meets the chief there who is called the Maha-Brahma. And he also points out that he has been the Maha-Brahma many times. He has been reborn there before he became a Buddha. Then he is also able to plunge into earth as if plunging into the water. And then he can also stand on the water as if he is standing on solid ground. Now all that kind of psychic powers he had. And even when we hear of Jesus Christ, who has been walking on water, that means even Jesus Christ had these psychic powers. So from a Buddhist point of view, these are not just beliefs. Even Jesus had psychic powers. And today there are people who say that Jesus was a Buddhist. And he had come to India and Tibet, and so many stories like that. So in other words, at that time there were yogis who had advanced in their meditation to such levels that it was possible to perform these miraculous feats. They are not taken to be miracles in Buddhism because they are all understood as natural phenomena, like scientific phenomena. Now, even at that time, people would have been not even believing if we say that we can produce pictures through a small piece in our hand. They didn't have cameras during the time of the Buddha. They didn't have computers. They didn't have these what are called special phones, and these are wonderful things. Now again he says, and he will never infer of me according to Dhamma with the divine ear element, which is purified and surpasses the human. That Blessed One hears both kinds of sounds, the heavenly and the human, those that are far as well as near. He could hear sounds that go on far away. And not only that, he could hear sounds coming from other worlds of spheres of existence. And then he says, he will never infer of me according to the Dhamma that Blessed One encompasses with his own mind the minds of other beings, other persons, what is today called telepathy. That telepathy is also possible for him. He could read other people's minds. He understands a mind affected by lust as affected by lust, and a mind affected by unaffected by lust. He understands. He understands minds affected by hate as affected by hate, and a mind unaffected by hate as unaffected by hate. He understands the mind affected by delusion as affected by delusion, and a mind unaffected by delusion as unaffected by delusion. He understands a contracted mind as contracted, and a distracted mind as distracted. He understands an exalted mind as exalted, and an unexalted mind as unexalted. He understands a surpassed mind has surpassed, and an unsurpassed mind has unsurpassed. He understands a concentrated mind as concentrated, and an unconcentrated mind as unconcentrated. He understands a liberated mind as liberated, and an unliberated mind as unliberated. So he is able to read other people's minds. Then he begins to talk about the powers, the 10 powers of a Tathagata. That word Tathagata is an important word that you should understand. Tatha means reality. Tathagata means gone to reality or arrived at reality. So the Sariputta, the Tathagata has these 10 Tathagata's powers, possessing which he claims the herd leader's place. Roars his lion's roar in the assemblies and sets rolling the wheel of Brahma. What are the 10? Now he is even using the word wheel of Brahma. That is the Brahma Jala. Here the Tathagata understands as it actually is, possible as possible and impossible as impossible. So the first thing that he understands, he is talking about the wisdom of the Buddha, is to understand what is possible and what is impossible. Then he understands as it actually is the results of actions undertaken past, future and present by way of possibilities and causes. That too is the Tathagata's power. That is the second power that he has. To understand the results of actions, or their action is what's called karma. Karma is the action. Again, the Tathagata understands as it really is the ways leading to all destinations. Whether you want to go to heaven or whether you want to go to hell or any other world, wherever it is, he knows how to go there. That is very important. Then again, the Tathagata understands as it actually is the world with its many and different elements. That too is Tathagata's power. The different elements in the world, he understands. Again, the Tathagata understands as it actually is how beings have different inclinations. Now, knowing different elements is like knowing chemistry. And then different inclinations is more about psychology. Again, the Tathagata understands as it really is the dispositions of the faculties of other beings. That is also psychological. And again, the Tathagata understands as it really is the defilements, the cleansing and emergence in regard to the jhanas, liberations, concentrations, attainments. He knows about these jhanas and ways of purity and tranquility of the mind. Again, the Tathagata recollects his manifold past lives. He can recall his past lives. He can remember the past. As far as he wants. There is no limit to that. Then again, with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, the Tathagata sees beings passing away and reappearing. You can see how a person dies and is reborn in another place. Just as we would see a person coming out of a house and going into another house, he is able to see these things happening. Again, by realizing for himself with direct knowledge, the Tathagata here and now enters upon and abides in the deliverance of mind, deliverance by wisdom. Now that is the highest knowledge. That is called the Sanya Vedahita Nirodha. That means that is the ultimate awakening from the dream of existence. That is the meaning of becoming a Buddha, where he understands what are called the fourfold sublime reality. So these are the most important things to understand about the Buddha, and the rest I don't need to read through this whole thing. You could read on your own and go through the entire sutra and he's here on page 73 or 169. Here he talks about the 5 destinations and Nibbana. So that is also something that we should know, that he is not just theorizing on anything. He is talking about his direct experience. Sariputta, there are these 5 destinations. What are the 5? Hell, the animal realm, realm of ghosts, human beings and gods. So there is the world of, which is called Niraya. Here it is translated as hell. But this word hell is a English word used mainly by Christians. So the Niraya is the word. So that description of hell by the Buddha is different from the description of the Christians. But we are using that word only. And then of course the animal realm. It is something that we are able to see, animals, different kinds of animals. And the realm of ghosts. Now there, ghost means a kind of invisible being, not visible to the human being. And then the human beings. He knows about the human beings. And then the gods. Gods refer to people, in English they are called angels. The inhabitants of heaven or the Deva worlds. There again, the heaven is not the same description as the Christian heaven. Heaven, according to the Buddha, is simply another kind of world which the human beings are not able to see. And there are mainly 6 kinds of Deva worlds. And then beyond the Deva worlds, there are the Brahma worlds. The Buddha has identified where these worlds are. This is not just talking about unknown things. The Deva worlds are connected with what is today called the solar system. Now the modern scientists are aware of what is called the solar system. And the solar system means planets moving round the sun. In ancient times, people didn't know these things. But now, with all the modern telescopes, people are able to see these things. And they have understood that what we see as stars are really suns, and round these suns there are planets going round. And these solar systems are also going round another center. And this collection of solar systems that go round the center is what is called the galaxy. So galaxy is not just that kind of phone that people use today. Galaxy is something that is found in the universe. And there are not only just one galaxy, even there are what are called clusters of galaxies. That several galaxies begin to turn round a center. And the Buddha has referred to these things. He call it the Sahasiloka Dhatu is the galaxy. And there are the 2 galaxy clusters, 3 galaxy clusters, 4 galaxy clusters, 5 galaxy clusters. These are all named by the Buddha. Sahasiloka Dhatu, Di Sahasiloka Dhatu, Ti Sahasiloka Dhatu, Chatu Sahasiloka Dhatu, Pancha Sahasiloka Dhatu, Dasa Sahasiloka Dhatu, Sata Sahasiloka Dhatu, even 100 galaxies going round, and even beyond that. So like that, he has been talking about these things. And he is also talking about how he visited these places and how some of the inhabitants of these galaxies, how they come and talk to the Buddha. And Buddha has been able to communicate with these people. Today, the modern scientists are not aware of these things. They are still trying to find out whether there are other beings in the universe. They have not found yet. That is because the human mind is not capable of knowing these worlds. But when the mind is cultivated in the proper way, it is possible to become aware of these things. So we can understand to what extent the mind of the Buddha has advanced. Once I came across a book written in the modern world. They have written a book about the mind of the Buddha, but I don't know whether they are talking about these things. So it is very important to understand that Buddha is not an ordinary person. It is very important to realize that according to the teachings of the Buddha, the human being can evolve to a very high level. And this is why the kind of religion that was brought to the world by the Buddha is something which is very unusual. Now, all other religions in the world, they are all believing in supernatural beings called gods. Buddhism is the only religion that is called a humanistic religion. The others are theistic religions, believing in supernatural beings called gods. But here, the Buddha pointed out that what is called religion is simply an effort of the human being to solve the problem of existence. We have a problem. All beings in the world, the animals, plants, and even human beings, have this problem of existence. But only the human being is aware of his own existence. The other animals are not really aware of the existence or even aware of this thing called death. It is the human being who is aware of his own existence, and that every human being ultimately has to die. And death is not only for human beings, all animals have to die. Even plants have to die. So whatever is regarded as living has to die. But actually, it's even the inanimate things die someday. It is like even the stones, the rocks, even the houses, all that comes to an end. Even this entire earth, this planet, even the suns and the moons, everything has to die. A time comes for their death. And this is the problem of existence. Whatever exists comes to an end. And this is why last time we spoke about this thing called existence, and also the difference between being and becoming. What the Buddha pointed out was that what we call life is not an existence. The word existence is a static concept. Static means it is not changing. But the normal reality is changing all the time. That is why we say that existence is a static concept in a dynamic reality. From the time we are born, you are gradually growing old. And ultimately, we end up with death. And that is the problem of life. Our problem of life is that it is changing all the time. But we look upon ourselves as static, existent beings. And we don't like to be changing or growing old, falling sick and dying. So that is the problem of life. So it is to solve this problem of life that the Buddha appeared after practicing what are called the paramitas. The paramita really is a kind of qualification to become a Buddha, just as a person might go into a school or university to study and qualify to become a PhD or some qualification like that. So you have to qualify to attain to that level. In the same way, in order to become a Buddha, we have to qualify. And that qualification is the paramitas. So, a Buddha comes into the world to point out that this world is not dominated by supernatural beings, but everything happens due to the laws of nature. And these laws of nature we discussed a few days ago. They are called the niyamas. Uttu niyama, bija niyama, chitta niyama, kamma niyama, and dhamma niyama. Niyama simply means a law of nature. Uttu niyama refers to the physical laws. Bija niyama, Uttu niyama is almost like the modern physics and chemistry. If you study physics and chemistry, you are studying the Uttu niyama. And then bija niyama refers to what is called biology, zoology and botany. The biologists, bija niyama. Then chitta niyama refers to psychological laws, talking about mental processes. That is the Chitta Niyama. And then Kamma Niyama refers to what is called karma, which is not known to the modern scientists. Karma Niyama and Dharma Niyama not known to the modern scientists. So the Karma Niyama and Dharma Niyama is what the Buddha talks about. But these are not supernatural things. These are all natural laws. There is nothing supernatural. So, the Buddha has understood these things, and that is why the Buddha talks about karma and rebirth, and then talks about what are called the Four Noble Truths, which we call the supernormal realities. So it's important to understand what a Buddha is. That's the important thing. That the Buddha is not just a belief, it is a real thing, which means that the human being can evolve. It's a process of evolution. And today there are a lot of scientific research done regarding the human brain and about the animals and the human being, and the theory of evolution. These are all connected with the teachings of the Buddha. We have nothing against the modern scientific discoveries or inventions or even the beliefs of scientists. Yeah, you have a question?
Bhante, last week you led us through the 8th episode, the first section, the Buddha, and you said this week you might explain the Dhamma one for us if you have time.
Well, we can talk about it if you are interested. The word Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditthiko Akaliko Ehipassiko Opanaiko Pachattang Veditabbo Vinyohiti. The first statement, we have to break down this thing into different statements. The first statement is Su Akhato Bhagavata Dhammo. The word Su means something like good or even well, W-E-L-L, well. Su Akhato means expressed in words. Akhato is a verbal expression. Now, Suakhato means well expressed verbally. Now, there is a belief among some philosophers who say that the truth cannot be expressed. The truth is not something that can be expressed in words. That is a belief. But here the Buddha points out that a Buddha can express the truth in words. So the teaching of the Buddha is something that has been expressed in words very clearly. So it means Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo means the teaching of the Buddha is clearly expressed in words. So this is very important to understand that. Suakhato Bhagavata Dhammo. And the second statement is Sanditthiko. Sanditthiko. Ditti is to be seen. We are talking about something that can be seen. Here the Buddha is talking about not unknown things that cannot be seen. Here the Buddha is talking about things that can be seen. Now they are seen doesn't mean that it is only through the eye. We see through all our senses. With the eye we see things. With the ears we hear things. With the nose we smell things. With the tongue we taste things. And with the body we touch things. So it is all understood through our own experience. In other words, it can be experienced through the senses, sensory experience. So in other words, whatever the Buddha is talking about is about something that can be seen, heard, smelt, tasted or touched. Here the Buddha is not talking about anything that cannot be experienced through the senses. In other words, that there is a word for this, and that means empirical. Empirical means that it can be experienced through the senses. So we are talking about something that can be experienced through the senses. We are not talking about something outside the senses. Because there are some philosophers who have been saying that the truth is not something that is experienced through the senses. The real truth is beyond the senses. So whatever is experienced through the senses is not true. That is, some people believe like that. Now, for example, Immanuel Kant was a philosopher who pointed out that there are two things. One is what we experience through the senses. And what is experienced through the senses, he called phenomenon. The word phenomenon was used to refer to what is experienced through the senses. And then he said that phenomenon may not be the truth. The real truth is beyond the senses. But we cannot see it or hear it or smell it or taste it. But there is something outside the senses, and that he called the noumenon. The word noumenon, and there came up a kind of philosopher who said that noumenon is the transcendental truth, a truth that cannot be seen by the ordinary people, but some mystics are able to see this through their extrasensory perception. Extrasensory perception means a perception that goes beyond the senses. And that was called transcendentalism. That kind of belief was called transcendental philosophy or transcendentalism. It is a truth that is transcendent, beyond the experience. But when these philosophers started saying that there is a transcendental truth, which is the real truth, and what is experienced through the senses is not the truth, there were some other philosophers who started saying, well, even your transcendental truth is simply an idea in your mind. You cannot get out of your mind. And therefore, we cannot believe in that transcendental truth. And then they said, we cannot speak about a truth because whatever we call a truth is a statement which can be expressed in words. It comes in the form of a sentence. So if it is coming in the form of a sentence, we can analyze the sentence and find out whether it is a meaningful statement or a meaningless statement. We cannot speak about a truth. There is no such thing as a truth. There is only a meaningful statement or a meaningless statement. So any statement that is based on what we can see or hear or smell or taste or touch, that is a statement based on what we experience through the senses, is a meaningful statement. If we talk about something which cannot be seen or heard or smelled or tasted or touched, it is a meaningless statement. That's what they said. So in other words, we can't speak about a truth That is what these philosophers pointed out. And so, another school of philosophy came up and said, the purpose of human thinking is not to go after truth, because there is no such thing as a truth in the world. The purpose of human thinking is not to discover truth, but to solve problems. So if a person offers a solution to a problem, it can be tested, it can be verified by trying it out, and if the problem is solved, then it can be accepted as a truth. So what we can call a truth is simply a solution to a problem. You see, that's very important to understand this. And this is why the teaching of the Buddha is talking about what is experienced through the senses. We are not talking about a truth outside the senses. And what the Buddha is talking about is not a truth, but a solution to a problem. And the problem is what the Buddha talks about when he talks about the fourfold reality of life, what is today called the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are not absolute truths. They are only a solution to a problem. It's only a solution to a problem. It is called a truth only because it solves the problem. Because it solves a problem, it can be called a truth. It is to that extent that it is a truth. This is why every sutra begins with, "Thus have I heard." The Buddha has asked the disciples to not to speak about a truth, but to say, if you say, "This is what I heard," that can be taken to be a truth. But if you say, "This is the truth," then it is a falsehood. This is why every sutra begins with, "Thus have I heard." This is the way I heard it. Or you can say, "This is what I have read in the book."
Bhante, his question is this.
Yeah.
You have always mentioned when something happens, it happens because of the presence of necessary conditions.
Yeah.
So if necessary conditions lead to this thing happening, do you call this thing happening as the truth, or do you call this thing happening as reality. Is that your question?
Yeah, what means those necessary conditions come together and the things happen. So this process, do you consider it as a proof or just a real proof?
No, the thing is, we are not going to use the word truth. This is only an observation. You see, you observe that when certain things are present, something happens. That's only an observation. And without calling a truth. Because there is a sutra where the Buddha, one is what is called the Kalama Sutra, but there is also another sutra where the Buddha says, Ekam hi satchang na dutiya matti. If there is only one truth and there are no two truths, there will be no arguments in the world. It is because people begin to speak of different kinds of truths that there is a lot of argument in the world. And then he says, Naheva satchani bahuni nana. That means in this world there are no truths in the world other than sensations. That means what we perceive through the senses. What is perceived through the senses is all that we can talk about. But people begin to use logic or rational arguments and begin to speak about two things called a truth and a falsehood. But there is no real truth or falsehood. That's what he says. So we can only talk about what I saw or what I heard or what I smelled or what I tasted or what I touched. That's all that we can talk about. We cannot call it a truth.
So even just now you mentioned
Huh?
about the Uttu Niyama, Vicca Yama, Citta Yama, all this, we just consider it as an observation or
What is that?
Niyamas?
Niyama.
Yeah, so do you consider it just as an observation?
Niyama, yes. These are all laws. Every law is not a truth. It is an observation. It is a discovery. Huh?
You continue with the Akaliko now.
What's that?
You started with after Santiko, then Akaliko. You continue with the Akaliko.
Sanditiko, Akaliko.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Sanditiko really means everything is experienced through the senses. That is the meaning of Sanditiko. Akaliko means it is Kala means time. Akalika means independent of time. That means we are not talking about time. In other words, we are not really talking about two things called space and time. Space and time are also concepts. These are not realities. What we call a reality is whatever is experienced through the senses is simply an experience through the senses. So every thing that we speak of as an existence is really not an existence, it is an appearance. So we have to distinguish between an existence and an appearance. So we make use of appearances and we produce the idea of existence. That is the important thing to understand. Sanditthiko akaliko. Now there is another one, ehi passiko. Ehi passiko means, ehi means come, passiko means see, come and see. Now come and see really means it can be verified. To come and see is to verify it. Now if you look in a telescope and see something that normal people can't see, you see it through the telescope. So you can say, well, I have seen it through the telescope, and you just believe what I say. But here, come and see means, just as I saw it through the telescope or even microscope, you can also come and see. That means it can be verified. So it's not some statement of the Buddha. Anyone else can come and verify it and see it. So, come and see means verifiability. So, whatever the Buddha talks about is a verifiable truth, something that can be verified. He's not talking about something that cannot be verified by other people. He doesn't say, you just believe what I say. Huh?
Not verifiable truth, it's
Yeah.
verifiable experience.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Verifiable experience, yeah. Sanditthiko, akaliko, ehi passiko, and openaiko is a very important word. Openaiko means upanayati. Upanayati. Upa means inside. Nayati means to bring you inside or to divert your mind to the inside. In other words, it is introspective. Introspective means you look within and not look outside. So you have to introvert your attention. Focus your attention within instead of focusing your attention outside. Openaiko, upanayati. Openaiko. Pacchattam veditabbo vinyohiti. Veditabbo means a person who is able to experience through the senses. Veditabbo. Pacchattam veditabbo means something that can be experienced by oneself. You don't have to believe because the Buddha said so. You can experience it by yourself. That is what it means. It can be verified and experienced by oneself. Vinyohi means one who is able to understand. That means an intelligent person. An intelligent person can experience it by oneself. So this is a description of the Dhamma or the teachings of the Buddha. The Dhamma is really an experience which can be verified by oneself. So it's very important to understand these things, and I hope you understood. So, I think we can stop here now. May through the power of all the merits that you have gained, may every one of you be able to gain freedom from all sufferings of samsara and attain the highest and most supreme bliss of Nibbana.